Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're very well tonight. So let's see who's on the stream. We have, let me see, we have Martha, great to see you. Cecil, great to see you. Guitar, ACDC, great to have you on. Toels, great to see you. We also have Alan O'Dowd, great to have you on, Alan. Ewan, great to see you. Who else have we got? Roseanne, great to have you on, Roseanne. We have Killer, great to have you on, Killer. Hope you're well. We have Boomerage, great to see you. Oh Snowy, great to have you on. Peter, great to see you too. Audrey, great to have you on. Hope you're well tonight. Raven 1983 Witch, great to see you. We also have Gravity Skeptic. Max for President. President of where? Thanks for that comment. We also have, let me see. Adam, great to see you. Mandy, great to have you on. Hope you're well, Mandy. We have Ruth Oroman, great to see you. Derek, great to have you on. Ruth, great to see you. Norflaner, great to see you. Ed Stacy, great to have you on, Ed. Hope you're well tonight. We also have Yoni, great to see you, Yoni. And Hama, great to have you. Ruth, great to see you too. We also have new name, CGM, great to have both of you too. Verti, great to see you once again. Colin, great to have you on, and so many others tonight. Ministerian, I see, and Jasper, and Number 3 too. Great to see you all. Inconsequential as well, and so many. Reagan Elite, I see. So welcome to everyone who's on tonight. I can't say hello to everyone, unfortunately. We're 270 viewers. That's amazing. That's great. We have Valerio Tarantino. Thanks so much for that super chat. Hi, Max. Boris. Boris's manager. Mangerà il panettone. I was going to read it in English. Boris mangerà il panettone a Natale. So does Boris eat? Boris will eat cake at Christmas. If you want to explain what that means in Italian. Anyway, let's hope for the best. Cheers. Thank you so much, Valerios. Yeah, yes. Sorry, it was a question. Does Boris Johnson eat cake? Big panettone cake is a big type of cake we have here in Italy at Christmas. Yeah, probably. I would say he does. Or maybe he's Pandoro. I'm not sure which it is. Thanks so much for that super chat. I hope you're well and hope you're going to have a great Christmas over in Britain this year, Valerio. Or are you back in Italy for Christmas? So many people on tonight. I want to say thanks to everyone who came on last Tuesday. We had our special guest, Richard. Unfortunately, we had some technical problems, but we still were able to have a good chat with Richard. And, of course, we'll be meeting up with some other guests later on as well. Conservator, great to see you on the stream tonight. 82 and so many more. So I just want to start off with this story, and then we'll jump into your chat, into the chat, and respond to some questions here. Remember, guys, to smash the like button as you pop on. Searches for cancel Conservative membership rise 1,900% in the past week following Christmas party scandal. Now, I don't know what this turns out to be, but it's a rise of 1,900%. So analysis of Google search data this morning reveals that online searches for cancel Conservative membership, a bit like what is Brexit or what does the EU do after the referendum, in the United Kingdom exploded 1,900% above average on the 9th of December after a video emerged of government officials discussing a Christmas party that was held while the rest of the country were in lockdown. A new finding by Casino B reveals that online interest for cancelling membership with the Conservative Party skyrocketed to 19 times the average volume in the last week. A spokesperson for Casino B commented on the findings. The data offers a fascinating insight into the reaction to the leaked video, not just from those who oppose the Conservative Party, but from the party members themselves. Which is because one thing is voters, one thing is the general public, but members of the party, cancelling your membership is one thing. The vast majority of people are not members. So if members are cancelling their subscription, that is very concerning for the Conservative Party. As calls for Boris Johnson to resign increase, the enormous rise in search volume of members wishing to leave the party is sure to be alarming for the Conservative government. Google searches for Boris Johnson resign rose 1,011% since the 7th of December, as well as searches for Christmas party, which surged by 334%. But much greater is this number, 1,900. And of course, it's relative. So the number of people cancelling their membership before this date is probably very little. So it is interesting. We don't really have any figures to compare it against, but it is good news. People are deciding, I've had enough of the Conservative Party. Boris Johnson has pissed me off, and I've decided to leave the party. Now, for me, I find it difficult how anyone could remain a member of the Conservative Party over the last number of years. Why is it this that has finally broken you? You know, the let the bodies pile high, or the disaster of Brexit, the Windrush scandal, the hostile environment, austerity. How are these were not enough, but yes, a party, probably because it affects ordinary people, and members of the party probably were following the rules, and they saw that the higher echelons of the party were not, and they got pissed off and said, I've had enough. This is good news. Leaving the party because of the party, well said, Londoner. Without him, we'll get COVID camps like Australia. There's no way Boris Johnson will be able to survive all of this turmoil. No, I think my mistake before was I thought Boris Johnson would resign for language he used in the past, or because of Brexit, or because of how the consequences of his actions are felt by others. But I think the party, this Christmas party, was the final straw for many people. And I think James O'Brien mentioned it before, how he got Brexit done, and for many people that was enough of a reason to hold their nose and vote for the Conservatives, or support the Conservatives, or not switch to the Lib Dems or the Labour Party. But this has been the final straw, I think, because, you know, ordinary members of the public were following the rules. Now, let's ignore the COVIDiots and let's ignore the extreme. But the vast majority of people were following the rules. They followed the guidance. They did what they were told. And they expected the government to do the same. And the government were not. And I think this really rubbed ordinary people the wrong way, because they had made the sacrifices over the last year to protect others, and they see that the government were just taking the piss. And they're extremely angry. And I've seen a number of interviews. I've heard a number of interviews as well where members of the Conservative Party, but also voters, people who have voted for the party for decades, saying, no, I've had enough. I'm not voting for them anymore. And if those people are not going to switch to the Labour Party or Lib Dems, I would prefer those people to stay at home and not come out and vote. Bozo will leave the Tories and become leader of the Christmas party. Very well said. The problem with the next leader will be another turd from the same cesspit. See, this, like, we have to be careful with what we wish for. Yes, Boris Johnson is an absolute disaster. It's better if Boris Johnson is gone. But we have to be careful about what replaces Boris Johnson. And I'm concerned it could be someone like Priti Patel, who is worse than Johnson, because she's not a clown. She's evil. Boris Johnson just doesn't give a crap about other people. I think Priti Patel is someone who does care about how her policies are felt, but not that she's caring. She knows which buttons to press, and she knows that there's a certain wing within the Conservative Party or the support base that are very happy with her hard line. So there are people within the Conservative Party who have a soul. Really, they do exist. But there are the far right within the party, and they are very happy with the likes of Priti Patel. So you have a number of different people. You have also Liz Truss, who could, Brexit Wonder Woman Liz Truss could throw her hat into the ring. I've always believed it would be Rishi Sunak, but I don't know if he has the star quality. And then there's also Michael Gove as well. But I don't think any of these can live up to the, I hate to say it, the charisma factor that Boris Johnson has. Let me read some more of your comments. Jacob Rees-Mogg is the perfect Grinch. Pretty pathetic. Yes. I really can't see them picking Pretty Vacant or Sunak. I think Sunak is popular because of the budget, because of the furlough scheme, and he's able to come across quite professional in the House of Commons. Now he's probably popular with the party and the supporters of the party, but I don't think he'd be that popular with the public. People criticize Keir Starmer as being a bit out of touch. That's nothing compared to Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak is completely out of touch. He's married to the daughter of a billionaire, and he's worth £150 million himself. So this is not somebody who can really... And of course Boris Johnson neither, but Boris Johnson's able to come across as the buffoon, and I think that was his way of connecting with people. Cahill, thanks so much for that super chat. It seems Johnson lied to Parliament over the wallpaper, so he'll be gone before the next Prime Minister's questions. I don't know. I don't think he'll be gone by the next PMQs. The next PMQs is just less than a week away, so thanks for that super chat. I don't think it'll be the case. I think he's going to hold on for another bit. Will he be gone before Christmas? I don't know. What's interesting is that I don't know if this is a signal or this is a red flag for the Tories, but the Express posted a story, and some of you probably saw the video on it, criticising Brexit. And that's not good because that's, they've been, if not the biggest, one of the biggest cheerleaders for Brexit in the media since the beginning, since before Brexit. They've been cheering on the UK leaving the European Union for ages, and they've turned on Brexit, it seems. Maybe it's just a once-off, but I think they want to offload as much of the crap onto Boris Johnson before they send him away. And I think at the moment they're looking for a way for him to leave. It's difficult to see how Boris Johnson would resign. He will resign, but it will be a case of him being forced to resign. The party will say you have to go, and he will resign. But under what pretext? I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see. I don't think it'll be about the party. I don't think the Christmas party. I don't think it'll be about the wallpaper. Unless it's just, he's going to say, I just want to spend more time with my family. It could be something like that. He say, I have a new child now, and I want to spend more time with my family, and I've done my best, and now it's time to go. Something like that. Audrey, I saw John Bercow on ITV. John Bercow for PM. Any speaker that doesn't let Trump into the parliament is fine with me. Yeah, I would love to see John Bercow as Prime Minister. He'd be a wonderful Prime Minister. Unfortunately, he'd struggle to win the candidacy for the Labour Party as leader. He wouldn't be able to win the leadership contest in the Labour Party. Unfortunately, he wouldn't have the support, but he would be a wonderful Prime Minister. Even just hire him for a day against Johnson, that would have been wonderful to see. Do you think that Boris is? Do you think Boris is would be bad for Labour, as the Tories may actually have a competent leader that they can keep them in power? See, it depends on the type of I think it depends on the type of backlash that the Tories are facing at the moment, because these parties involved the leadership. They involved senior members of government, and you have people like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's still the leader of the House. I think if they were to replace Johnson, they would have to also replace the cabinet, and they would have to get Jacob Rees-Mogg out of that position and put in someone else. So they'd have to wipe the slate clean with somebody else. But see, the problem is always the voters. The voters put Boris Johnson there because Boris Johnson lied to them. Boris Johnson said, "I get Brexit done." So, who's going to be able to carry that can? I don't know. And what's interesting also in regards to Brexit is that the ECJ, which was something that Lord Frost said was, a red line for him, that was quietly dropped today. So it seems that when it comes to the Northern Ireland Protocol, the British government are being a bit more flexible than they previously were, which is good, which is welcoming, which is welcomed, I should say. Tyler, thanks so much for that super chat. As much as it galls me to say, I think Starmer's push for the Tories to get rid of Johnson is the best option. Keep Tories from uniting around outside attack. Exactly, yeah, and that's what I was talking about in the video today. I think what Starmer is doing is he's avoiding providing ammunition to the Conservatives. So if he goes out and says Boris Johnson needs to resign, Boris Johnson will just go to his party and say, "Look, Starmer is attacking me, you need to rally around me." And a lot of them would do that. They're going to protect the party, they're going to protect Johnson. So it's a better line of attack is to say, look at what Johnson's doing to you. Look at he's dragging you down with him. Do you want to end up with kicked out of your seat? No, you don't. So you need to look after yourself. And of course, the members of Parliament have no loyalty to Boris Johnson. A lot of them got in because of him and his Get Brexit Done. But as soon as he's gone, he'll be forgotten about. Their first loyalty is to themselves, and then to the party, and then to their constituents, or maybe the donors. The donors are in there somewhere as well, of course, above the constituents. But they have no deep loyalty to the leader, because the leader will be replaced when the party decide. Of course, they'll on TV and in interviews they'll say, "Yes, I support the leader. Boris Johnson's doing a wonderful job," until he's not, and then they will drop him. Back in 2019, all of them were happy to have Johnson in their constituency because they knew he was popular. Now he wouldn't be able to go near those constituencies. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. These Christmas party revelations are just another diversion I expect to cover for something much more serious, like the torture of Julian Assange. I think there is things going through Parliament at the moment, like the immigration bill, the way it's stripping away people's rights as citizens. This is extremely concerning, and I think not so much that it's cover, but I think it's a scandal that they're willing to use, and it does deflect. So I think we need to keep an eye on Parliament and what's happening, and not get sucked into this too much. Thanks for that super chat number 3. Yes, you're right. We have another one from DC. Thanks so much, DC. Hope you're well tonight. Do you think support for Scottish independence will drop if Boris goes? No, I don't think it's going to drop. Because I think at the beginning it was Boris was a problem, and this created more support for Scottish independence. the Tories, whoever replaces Johnson is going to be just as unpopular. Imagine a situation where Priti Patel replaced Boris Johnson, or Michael Gove replaced Boris Johnson, or Rishi Sunak replaced Boris Johnson. Support for Scottish independence is not going to drop. I think it's actually going to continue to rise. Maybe Johnson is a bit of a catalyst, but I think the rot has set in to a certain extent that it's no longer possible for the Conservatives to claw back any support for the Union. It's not just Johnson that's the problem. The entire Conservative Party and the way Parliament treats Scotland is extremely problematic in Scotland, and I think and I'm pretty sure that Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP understand this, and what they're going to go forward with is attempts to have a referendum. It'll be rejected. It'll be probably rejected by, or attempts will be made by the Conservatives to stop it. So it doesn't matter if Boris Johnson was in charge or Michael Gove was in charge, it will be viewed very negatively in Scotland. So yes, it's better. The longer Boris Johnson stays Prime Minister, the more he's helping the independence movement. But his replacement, I don't think, is going to do much damage to that, because it was not so much about Boris Johnson, it was about Westminster and Brexit. And Westminster isn't going to change its tune, and Brexit is still trudging along. Thanks for that super chat, DC. Hope you're fine tonight. Finally, the evil puppy ran out of batteries. Okay, I'm not sure what that's about. It's wonderful when you read things without a context. Let me see. So much for the crap of take back control. It's clearly more like take control and give it to him to dish it out to his mates. Yes. The Tories will pick a Scots-British man to fend off the Scottish independence and fight the SNP in Westminster. Can seriously see Gove taking over. See, so the problem with that is that Gove would suit just that very limited fight. Gove isn't very good on Brexit. He's not very good on Prime Minister's questions. Gove isn't all that great of a politician. He's very good at lying. He's very good at being slimy. But I don't see him being respected as a Prime Minister. Anyway, when the leader resigns, shouldn't there be a general election instead of just replacing the leader with another one? Doesn't make sense to me. Support for Scottish independence will not drop if Sunak, Gove, Patel or Truss is leader. Jeremy Hunt, on the other hand, would steadily the entire ship even closer ties to the EU. Yes. Did you see the John Bercow interview on GB News? Good Morning Britain, not GB News. Good Morning Britain. I saw part of it. Yes, I saw a clip from. I didn't see the whole interview, but he done a wonderful job in the part that I saw. Party election only, stupid. Yes. Anyway, let's move on. So, Boris Johnson accused of misleading ethics advisor over number 10 refab. Boris Johnson lied to everyone. So he lied to his ethics advisor. Imagine the Conservatives have an ethics advisor. Is it like, shouldn't it be an unethical advisor instead of an ethics advisor? Anyway, Boris Johnson has been accused of misleading his own ethics advisor. It's like lying to your psychologist. You're doing therapy and you're lying to. They're there to try and help you to advise you in which things you should do, you shouldn't do, and you end up lying to them. Exposing the Prime Minister to a potential suspension from the House of Commons as MPs demanded a fresh investigation into his personal donors. With pressure mounting after a disastrous series of mistakes and scandals, Johnson's integrity has once again been under the spotlight after an official report suggested he gave differing accounts to investigators looking into the redecoration of his Downing Street flat. We can probably lay all of this at Carrie's feet. She probably wanted it, decorated with £800 or £750 wallpaper. Johnson probably didn't really give a crap. Now he's going to go down because of something he wasn't even all that interested in. Their calls were provoked by a report published on Thursday by the Electoral Commission, which has spent 7 months investigating the funding of the costly redecoration. The Commission fined the Conservative Party £17,800, which is insane, okay? The fine is like 1/10 of the actual donation. Imagine if you received a bribe of £100,000 and the fine for receiving a bribe for £100,000 was £10,000. Okay. Then there isn't exactly a disincentive to receive bribes, is there? The Commission fined the Conservative Party £17,800 for a serious donation reporting serious donation reporting failures related to the work. But documents released by the Commission also reveal Johnson sent a WhatsApp message to the Tory donor Lord Brownlow in November last year, seeking more money for the costly makeover. Like, yeah, I finished the budget. Can you send me some more? He sounds like, a teenager who has spent all their money and they're asking their parents for some more. Their pocket money. In an earlier inquiry into the matter, Johnson had assured Lord Gilt, the independent advisor on ministers' assets or interests, that he did not know who gave the money for the work until it was revealed by the media in February this year. Imagine, you receive, I don't know how much money you receive. It's like, £59,000. He received £59,000, almost £60,000. Imagine if you received £60,000 and you didn't know who it was from. It happens to me all the time. I'm sure it happens to you you open your bank account and you're like, oh, wow, £60,000 there. Who's it from? I don't know. Oh, well. maybe they'll send me another £60,000 next week. DC, thanks so much for that super chat. What's your prediction for the forthcoming North Shropshire by-election next week? Thanks as DC. It's still a little bit early, but I would probably put money on the Liberal Democrats winning it. I haven't seen any. I want to wait for another little bit before we make real predictions, but it's looking likely that the Lib Dems will win it. It's a toss-up at the moment between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. I'm pretty sure that if the Lib Dems do win that seat, then Boris Johnson is toast. He will be forced out. So I don't know if he'll go before Prime Minister's questions, but if it's a loss for the Conservatives, I'm pretty sure he'll be out on his ear after that. Because it would have demonstrated to the party that he's a liability. He's a true liability. And we've seen already examples of how he is a liability to the party. A number of councils have switched from Conservatives to Labour. Council seats have switched from Conservatives to Lib Dems, and also the Greens have picked up council seats as well, at the expense of the Conservatives. So imagine you're a Conservative councillor or a Conservative MP, and you lose your seat because of Boris Johnson. You're not going to be too happy. What if you're facing a potential by-election soon, or you're worried about a general election? There's some of the seats I've been looking at. There's a majority of 800. There's a majority of 400. That's really concerning if you're an MP from the Conservative Party, and Boris Johnson is pulling you down. And on the other side, you have the Lib Dems and the Labour Party joining forces in a sense to oust you. I'd be very worried. And the more Boris Johnson remains in number 10, the more damaging it is to you. Tyler, thanks so much for that super chat again. Those fines sound like what happened at Wall Street and in DC here in the US. Yeah, it's like the fine is a slap on the wrist, basically. And it reminds me of... I think it's in Switzerland or maybe it's in Finland. There's some Finnish people on the stream. They can confirm it or not. But where, I think it was in Switzerland in particular, where, for example, a speeding fine is linked to your income last year. So if you're a multimillionaire, your fine is going to be much bigger than someone who earns minimum wage, which makes perfect sense. Because if it's cheaper, if you own a Ferrari or something like that, and the fine is like €50 or £50, it's not going to harm you. So I'm not going to bother slowing down. I can afford that £50. Well, if it's somebody who's working minimum wage, that £50 is the difference between a day's work and not. Depending on the work you're doing, of course. Thanks so much for that super chat. But yeah, a slap on the wrist is not going to punish the party. It's not designed really to punish the party. BD, thanks so much for that super chat. Keep the heads rolling. I do my best. Whoever's going to replace Boris Johnson, I'm going to criticize them just as much. But I am concerned that the person who will replace Boris Johnson could be much worse than him. Because he's allowed to get away with a lot of things because of his buffoonery. The next person would know that they can't do that, and they may be much more calculating and cruel in a sense. And I'm extremely concerned it could be someone like Priti Patel. That would be a dark road to go down. Though Downing Street denied that there was any inconsistency, Labour's deputy leader Angela Rayner said Johnson must now explain why he lied to the British public. She said that the Prime Minister was taking people for fools. Yes. The Labour MP Margaret Hodge has written to the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner Catherine Stone, urging her to investigate whether Johnson misled Guild and who cleared him of breaching the ministerial code. In a letter sent to The Guardian, Hodge said it appeared that the Prime Minister may have lied to Gill's inquiry about when Johnson became aware of the donations. If these allegations are true, then this would be an egregious case of dishonesty and a breach of the Nolan principles. Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, said the discrepancy in accounts was extremely serious. How do standards function if the Prime Minister doesn't tell the truth to Guild? And we're talking about, yes, so what are these payments about? The spokesperson declined to explain why some of the payments for the flat, including one of £59,000, were cited in the new report, but not seemingly been declared by Johnson. In total, Johnson repaid more than £110,000 for flat refurbishments reported to have included wallpaper costing, not £750, £840 a roll. Once again, I'm who pays really £840 a roll? No wonder he needed money. He probably thought, we'll head down to B&Q and pick up a few rolls. And Kerry was like, no, I'm not going to B&Q. Are you insane? I'm not going and meeting with the riffraff? No way. Meeting with voters? No way. No, that's way below me. No, we're going to order in this wonderful wallpaper that costs £840 a roll. Anyway, Mr. Peter KJ, thanks so much for that super chat. Isn't it frustrating when the Tories get a new PM? They will have a clean slate. In Denmark, the drunk driving fine is proportional to salary, not speeding. Thanks so much for that correction as well. So I didn't remember where it was, and it's the drunk driving fine, not speeding, as far as I know. And that's perfect. You know, if the fine is a pittance to someone, they're just going. It's not a disincentive not to do the action again. But it is, yes, it's frustrating. Boris Johnson will have all the responsibility loaded onto him. He'll be sent out the door. He'll take his boxes with him, a bit like we saw Dominic Cummings doing. And within a few days, he will be forgotten about. The new leader will be welcomed into the House of Commons, and it will be more or less forgotten about. We won't forget about it, but the politicians will. We need to move on. That was Boris Johnson. And what you're going to hear, of course, like clockwork, is the MPs who will come forward and say, I disagreed with Boris Johnson. I was the unique voice of reason in the room. I stood up to him. And they'll start to do this as it becomes more and more clear that he's going to be booted out. They say, no, I don't believe in the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister should resign. He was right to resign. I had called for him to resign, things like this. And I welcome our new leader, Sajid Javid or Rishi Sunak or Priti Patel or Michael Gove or whoever the hell it's going to be. But, this is money that was given to Boris Johnson to pay for refurbishments of the flat. And what's important is, what did Boris Johnson do in return for this person? Did they win a PPE contract? Did they are they waiting for their seat in the House of Lords? What did this person get in return? We've seen with Goldsmith, who gave Boris Johnson use of his £25,000 a week villa for free. Boris Johnson had put him into the House of Lords, even though he had failed to win an election. So he failed to win support from the public, and Boris Johnson said, don't worry, I'll put you in the House of Lords. You don't have to win an election there. And of course, strangely, Boris Johnson was able to stay at his £25,000 a week villa for free. Like, how is that not... how do people look at that? Somebody who's living in a council flat, council house, somebody who's on minimum wage, or somebody who's on universal credit, or somebody who's on a 0-hour contract, or some pensioner who's struggling to pay the bills. How can they look at that and say, yeah, I'm on Boris Johnson's side? I don't understand this. Is it the Brexit mentality? Just ignore everything else? I don't know. Last week, Ian Blacksmith from the SNP tried to get him ousted. Pity. Now, I think I've changed my mind on calling Boris Johnson to resign, because it's not working, and it needs to be. And while I admire people like Ian Blackford or other people in the opposition calling for Johnson to resign, saying you have to resign, we know that he has an 80-seat majority, and they're not going to listen to the SNP or the Labour Party. But if they feel their position is under threat, then they will push him out. And maybe a better line of attack. I'm not going to give Ian Blackford advice. He knows Parliament much better than I do. But I would say it's better to not point the finger at Boris Johnson, but point the finger at the members of Parliament and say, you're going to pay for his mistakes. You know that. When the election comes up, we're going to mention you aligning yourself with him. You aligning yourself with the corruption. You aligning yourself with the party, the Christmas party. So when, there's a seat and there's a Conservative member and there's a Labour member or the Conservative SNP, we're going to expose you. So it's not in your interest to defend the Prime Minister. Priti is going to be the next PM. I bloody well hope not. That would be obscene. Probably reimburse him for the late date. Slip through the tax refund scheme and quadrupled his investment. Yes. Okay, let's move on. Staying with Johnson and the Tories. Tories look in the mirror. Hasn't the price of being humiliated by Johnson become too high? So thinking of throwing a boozy office party, a potential super spreader event in the teeth of the COVID storm, then knock yourself out, is the official advice from the government accused of being too willing to open a celebratory wine bottle itself. Just don't, whatever you do, enter the office to actually do some work. The Omicron variant has finally prodded Johnson into adopting a fallback COVID plan B. And what is classically Johnsonian plan is contradictory, rushed, and shrouded in murky allegations. From Monday, everyone who can should work from home, but the Prime Minister wants office bashes and school nativity plays to go ahead. There will be vaccine passports for entering big events, but no masks in pubs and restaurants. So this is, yes, typical Johnson style of work from home if you can, but if you want to have an office party, do that. You don't have to wear a mask in a pub or restaurant, but you should wear one on public transport and shops. Doesn't make any real sense, and as we know, cases are rising. It's just I think a last ditched attempt to maintain support or to stop the likes of the COVID recovery group faction within his party from bringing him down. He's not putting the public's safety, at the top of his priority list. He is at the top of his priority list. He has always been the priority. Him, Boris Johnson, Bojo, whatever you want to call him. Number 3, thanks so much for that super chat. Resignation. Boris Johnson and his cabinet are criminals. They should be hauled through the courts. Yes. And I think what's going to happen is eventually there's going to be an inquiry into the pandemic, and Boris Johnson will be dragged before the inquiry, but he's not going to be punished, I'm sorry to say. Boris Johnson's biggest punishment will be being kicked out of number 10. That would be, unfortunately, his biggest punishment. They should be dragged before the courts, yes. An inquiry should be held, and a civil case should be brought against them as well, because they were in charge. They didn't just make mistakes, they ignored the advice of scientists, and we have lots of evidence of that. And they ignored the experts, which made predictions that came true. And we've seen how Boris Johnson, throughout the pandemic, ignored calls for lockdowns, ignored the advice from the likes of Sage, which said you should increase mask wearing, things like this. And he didn't even follow the guidance himself. He undermined his own policies. So yes, him, Matt Hancock, and whoever else, and whoever was handing out these contracts to the likes of Randox and others, they should be dragged before the courts as well. Thanks for that super chat number 3. I agree 100% with you. Let me read some more comments before we move on. Steve Baker for Prime Minister. No. Hard man Steve Baker. Use his proper title, Colin. Okay. He needs telt, yes. I can tell you who will take over from Boris? Sajid. No, I don't think Sajid Javid, because he left the cabinet, or he was fired from the cabinet, and then he came back in from the cold. But I don't see Sajid Javid as becoming next Prime Minister. No, I don't see him replacing Johnson. It depends on what type of leadership contest there is, though. But I would see someone like Rishi Sunak, Michael Gove, and I hate to say it, maybe Priti Patel. No, Priti Patel is probably a long shot, but I think it's down to either Gove or Sunak at the moment, unless somebody else comes along. Raving Monster Raving Loony Party will win the next election. Well, the Monster Raving Loony Party won the last election, so yeah, there's a chance that they could win again. Lockdown is imminent for the UK. This seems to be the case, yes. So I'll actually move on to that topic now. It says here, stringent UK COVID measures needed within a week, a leak reveals. So it says here, British top public health officials have advised ministers that stringent national measures need to be imposed by the 18th of December to avoid COVID hospitalizations surpassing last winter's peak, according to documents leaked to The Guardian. Sajid Javid, the Health Secretary, received a presentation from the UK Health and Security Agency on Tuesday, warning that if the new Omicron variant leads to less serious disease than Delta, it risks overwhelming the NHS, with 5,000 people admitted to hospital a day. In an interview with The Guardian, the epidemiologist, Professor Neil Ferguson, said the total could be double that number. Number 10 insisted that there was no imminent plans to bring in more measures after the Plan B measures were announced for England this week, but Cabinet Minister Michael Gove, who chairs the Cobra meeting on Friday, said the government has been presented with some very challenging information about the speed of the spread. So here's the presentation that was shown to Sajid Javid. Let me read your comment before we go. Let me see. This is from Tyler. Once again, thanks so much, Tyler. Comments about Bojo's punishment can also be said about politicians involved in the attack on the US Capitol as well. Yeah, his punishment will be leaving office, unfortunately. I don't see Boris Johnson being suffering any financial loss. I don't see him doing time in prison. No, I would bet against that happening. The worst that's going to happen to Boris Johnson is he will lose his seat. He'll be removed from the House, from his position as Prime Minister, and he may lose his seat, but that's as far as it would go. I don't see it being any worse for him at all. We also have thanks for that super chat. We have another one from Scott Stewart. Thanks so much, Scott. Bojo de Gonfiner. Okay. Thanks for that super chat. Yes. Gonfiner. Milo, thank you so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. All their choices suck. A dark horse would be better. Stuart, maybe. What's his first name? I forget his first name. What's not Rod Stewart? That's someone else. Rory Stewart. Rory Stewart would be. And now I'm going to see all these comments about. No, Rory Stewart would be the best of a bad bunch, I think. Not a big fan of Rory Stewart, but if he was to return and say, "Look, I'm going to run again," there's a chance that he could win. But I think the problem now is that Boris Johnson has kicked out most of the moderates in the party. So you're left with these idiots, extremists in the party now, and career politicians. So I don't know if Rory Stewart would be able to win it. But you could be right. There could be someone lurking in the dark that could jump forward and win the leadership contest. But I'm more inclined to say it's someone like Sunak or Gove. Desmond Swine. Desmond Swine. The UK needs a Bastille Day. It does indeed. I am sailing. Damn it. I knew I shouldn't have said that. How about a prime minister from the 18th century? No. No. I'm hoping that he's on his way out. Rory Stewart is not pro-Brexit, although he said he is pragmatic when it comes to Brexit. And look, Brexit is not very popular with the public at the moment. Rod Stewart for Prime Minister. Although I think Rod Stewart is pro-Scottish independence, so I don't know if that would be the case either. That's the Rod Stewart, not Rory Stewart. Swain would be a great shout. UBI for president or for prime minister, yes. QA library. So if we look at these figures, desire to keep daily COVID-19 emissions of Omicron below 1,000. Then you see how it expands out from the 8th you'd have 12,000 doubling, going up to 47,000 on the 13th. While if it was 5,000, you go from 62,000 to 248,000. That's the worst case scenario. The Guardian has also leaked advice from the UK HSA for Javid marked official sensitive, saying the key point is that under the range of plausible scenarios, stringent action is needed on or before the 18th of December 2021 if doubling numbers stay at 2.5 days. Even if doubling times rise to around 5 days, stringent action is likely still needed in December. So stringent action is required either way. It added the rapid spread of Omicron means that action to limit pressures on the health system might have to come earlier than intuition suggests. Its calculations suggest that even if Omicron causes less severe hospitalizations rate of 1% or 0.5% compared to Delta's 1.5%, then stringent national measures wouldn't be needed by the 18th of December at the latest. So we've seen with Plan B, but Plan B is not enough. We're going to see probably much stricter, probably a lockdown over Christmas. I don't see any other way out of it. Back to your comments. Well, James Gillian, thanks so much for that super chat. No matter what Biden says and no matter what the West does to try and bulk it up, democracy is dead. Boris Johnson has demonstrated over the last number of years about how he has prorogued Parliament, lied to the Queen, and the manipulation of the public and the press, and first past the post. The maintaining of first past the post is also a problem. I don't know if democracy is dead, but it's definitely not doing very well at the moment. And I'm concerned about what's happening in the US because more and more people are becoming more and more polarized, more and more extreme. And instead of unity, what the US needs at the moment is more and more division. And I'm afraid that in 2022, the Congress is going to flip back to the Republicans, and then the Republicans are going to block every piece of legislation Joe Biden wants to push through. And then you're going to end up with another Republican president. Now, whether it be the lunatic from before, I don't know, but it's certainly going to be somebody pretty horrible. We always think no one could be worse than Trump. You never say that. No one could be worse than Boris Johnson. Priti Patel would be worse than Boris Johnson. Oh, we have another super chat from DC. Thanks so much for that. Thanks to, as well to James. Do you think the person that replaces Boris will be more likely to say yes to Indy 2, or will it be still be no? I am thinking no. It's the the position from the Conservative Party is not going to be any different than Boris Johnson's when it comes to Scottish independence. No, there's no one. Because it would be toxic to that individual. They have to promote the union. They have to be saying, I'm going to stop Scottish independence. I'm going to stop a referendum taking place. And that's why I'm concerned with somebody like Priti Patel, because she would racket up the rhetoric. She's seen as a hardliner, and I'm pretty sure that she would be itching for a fight with Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP in Scotland, and she'd be the type of person who would. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here, but she'd be the type of person who would send the military in. Like, I'm not trying to compare Scotland with Catalonia, but the way the Spanish government reacted to the Catalonian government seeking independence, and I'm not comparing the two because they're completely different, but just the reaction, shocked me because I didn't think the Spanish government would react in that way. Of course, it was a right-wing government at the time, and Priti Patel would probably do something similar. I wouldn't be surprised. So while Boris Johnson is indifferent to the union, I think Priti Patel would use it as she'd weaponize the union. That's what I'd be concerned about. So it may actually be worse than before. But then it depends if it's someone else. But I don't see a pragmatist replacing Johnson. I don't see someone more moderate. Because the party has been reformed in a sense. It's not like the Conservative Party of 5 years ago. The party is much more to the right now, and you're going to end up with somebody much more to the right. Maybe not so much the right of Boris Johnson, but more to the right of the mainstream. Canada is fine, New Zealand too. That's good to hear. And Australia. I know Australia's having some problems at the moment. Priti Patel would sponsor research to turn the English Channel into a hydrochloric acid in order to stop the French fishing in it and anyone from crossing it. Priti Patel is I don't think actually cares about immigration, but she knows that she can use it as a tool. The party's hardline nutters. Let's be honest, this government is garbage and everything they stand for. There will be a stalking horse just as there was with John Major in 1991. Anthony John Charles Meyer. Good morning, Bayerberg. So guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I want to show you a funny clip, and then we'll move back into the serious stuff in a moment. So I hope you enjoy this.
Are you a public figure?
Let's turn it up a little bit.
In a bit of a mess, a government department in need of some distraction from your incompetence/malevolence, or just a bored pundit who wants to cause a stir? Then you'll love our classic game, Playing Politics. So how does it work? Well, if you find yourself in a tricky argument, simply claim that your opponent is playing politics, thereby invalidating their point of view and winning the debate. I think people should obey the law regardless of their role in government. You're just playing politics. What you did was wrong and I expect an apology. Stop playing politics. Society should be organised in a fairer way. Well, that sounds to me like playing politics. No, I'm just doing politics. Well, that sounds boring. Lighten up. Playing politics. It's the game that can be enjoyed at any party, even ones that may or may not have happened. Was there a Christmas party in Downing Street? I don't want to preempt the investigation. But if there was, then everyone there was playing at politics. Already a master at playing politics? Try our new advanced edition, Playing Politics with People's Lives. Why should people follow your rules when you clearly don't obey them yourself? You're just playing politics with people's lives. Your Nationality and Borders Bill allows people to be stripped of their citizenship without notice. Well, those people could be terrorists. Stop playing politics with people's lives. You're also going to order Border Force to push back refugee boats in the Channel in order to satisfy the xenophobic right wing of your party because you're scared of Nigel Farage. That really is playing politics with people's lives. No, we are respecting the will of the people. And nothing trumps that. Playing politics. Because if your arguments are bad, just say that arguing is bad. And when you don't really need anything, everything can be a game, even running a country.
It's all a game. So, I want to show you this clip with Michael Gove. Maybe Michael Gove is positioning himself as a future leader. Let's hear what he had to say.
Well, the Cabinet Secretary is looking at all of the allegations about events, and I'm sure that people will want him to investigate quickly so that the facts are clear, established, and in the public domain. And I don't want to preempt or cut across the Cabinet Secretary's investigation, and I understand why this is an issue of public concern. But I also think it's important that we recognise that while it's vital that we get a rapid and full account of events here, it's also important that we focus on, as Chris Whitty was reminding us earlier this week, the need to ensure that we have in place the appropriate protections this Christmas in order to prevent the virus spreading in a way that would lead to more illness, more hospitalisation, greater pressure on the NHS, and also economic damage as well.
It's not very clear here, but Michael Gove has been AWOL for a long time. He's been missing. And now he pops up to talk about how, the government need to take things seriously. What's happening with Boris Johnson, the Christmas party, is not really a concern. And it's time for people to be prepared for what comes. I think this is his attempt, maybe, and I'm reading too much into this, but I think this could be an attempt by him to position himself as a replacement. Because where has Michael Gove been? I haven't heard from Michael Gove in months. The last time I saw him was in the House of Commons, and I haven't seen him since then. That was at least a month ago. So now he pops up just as, Boris Johnson is being shown where the exit is. He hasn't left the building yet, but he's been explained the exit is over here, Mr. Johnson, if you'd like to use it at your earliest convenience. Slayer Rock 2, thanks so much for that super chat. Choosing a new Tory PM is like trying to find a Ferrero Rocher in a dog poo bin. When you're not sure whether there's actually a Ferrero Rocher in there at all. That's a lovely analogy. I love it. I might have to steal it. Thanks so much for that super chat. No, you find the wrapper after going through all the dog poo, and then you open it and it's just another dog poo. Gove has been hiding in the long grass. He's been hiding in the white powder, maybe. And can we play Michael Gove's racist university debate tape? I don't have it in front of me, so I may have a look. I'll look for it later on. Next Tory leader, Truss Rot. Oh my god. I'm being punished for that Rod Stewart comment from before. Okay, let's move on.
Parents sometimes make a present of newspapers from the day their baby was born. Maybe not this newly extended family. The newborn will soon be heading to this Downing Street flat, which today prompted more bad headlines, as the Electoral Commission slapped a fine on the Tory party for the way the Prime Minister and others went about funding a lavish redecoration.
This is just a bit more information about the corruption. Gareth MacDonald, thanks so much for that super chat. Plain politics. No, Max. The game Boris Johnson is playing is known as Carrie, please pop another few sprogs whenever it's politically inconvenient. Just imagine it. Boris Johnson, that would be like, wait for it, go. Somebody was joking that he was force-feeding her Vindaloos. That's quite disgusting. Thanks so much for that super chat, Gareth.
Again, Boris Johnson's taking the British public for fools. He's not only broken the law, but made a mockery of the standards we expect from our Prime Minister. He's been fined for, over £17,000 and, regarding the refurb of his flat.
I paid for it. I have covered the costs. I paid for Downing Street refurbishment personally.
Well, eventually, yes, but only after a long attempt to farm out the bills. The Electoral Commission report makes clear that this was a redecoration begun without obvious means of payment. Bills for tens of thousands of pounds.
As you do, you're going to refurbish your flat and you say, okay, we're going to knock down a wall, we're going to put in some new furniture, we're going to repaper, we're going to paper all of the flat. How big is this flat? Like over £100,000 to refurbish a flat. Like, can someone find the actual floor plan or an idea of how big this flat is? Because it sounds huge, considering them. Like when you look at the amount of money they spent on redecorating, not refurbishing it, like restructuring it. Just putting up some new wallpaper and putting down some carpet.
Pounds are paid for by a government department, then paid off by the Conservative Party, and they were then paid off by Tory donor Lord Brownlow. 3 more chunky bills are paid off direct by Lord Brownlow. Only when others get to hear about the secret payments does Boris Johnson get out his own chequebook to settle up the redecoration bill.
Then why didn't he do it at the beginning?
During all this money shuffling to pay for the redecoration, caught here on camera, the Conservative Party broke the law in not declaring a big donation from Lord Brownlow. And the Electoral Commission has seen WhatsApp exchanges proving that Boris Johnson discussed settling bills for the redecoration with Lord Brownlow in November 2020. Many said that seemed to contradict the independent advisor on ministers' interests, Lord Geidt, who'd reported that Boris Johnson didn't know anything about the payments until many months later. Downing Street insisted the 2 reports were entirely consistent.
As Prime Minister, it's my duty to take difficult decisions, to do what is right to protect.
All this as the allegations of boozy Downing Street gatherings that broke COVID rules spawned viral mockery online. And this from Tory MPs worried how their constituents were receiving the news.
Theresa Villy.
There is understandable, real public anger about what seems to have happened at Downing Street, and that is contributing to people's unhappiness and discontent with renewed COVID restrictions.
My constituents in Kettering are very angry indeed at reports of Christmas parties in Downing Street during what was a very large second wave of COVID, and the behaviour was totally inappropriate and possibly criminal.
I've known the Prime Minister for many years, and the Prime Minister is a man of honour and integrity.
How can he stand there and say that with a straight face? How can you say that about Boris Johnson? He's paid to say this. He's just regurgitating something that has been presented to him. You can imagine how he's reading to his children at night. It's like, and then the monster came and it ate the child's head off. And then it, what did you say? Yeah, just words, okay? It doesn't mean anything.
And he has presented to this House, his position yesterday.
Heading back into the office today, one of the number 10 staff.
Gareth McDonald, again, thanks so much for that super chat. Wait a minute, Max. This isn't a dramatic pause. Christmas party, is it? Dun dun dun. How many people are at the gathering? A fine is en route. Look, how many parties did they have? Dominic Cummings is saying that a number of parties have. Now, I'm not a fan of Dominic Cummings, as you can imagine. He's a liar and a charlatan, but a stopped clock. And he's also very angry with Boris Johnson. He calls him the trolley. He has said a number of parties have taken place, and senior members of cabinet may have been at them.
Filmed joking about a party in Downing Street a year ago. The Cabinet Secretary's inquiry into that gathering will also now look into media reports of another number 10 party and a Department for Education drinks event. Before all that, Plan B, starting with the work from home guidance, is stirring Tory rebellion. MPs will vote on new mask and vaccine passport rules on Tuesday.
They're asking people to work from home, but then still go out to pubs and restaurants and theatres and football stadiums with their friends. So there's a sense that that's not going to hold. They're just softening us up for some more restrictions. So I don't believe it's something I can support.
Do you think that goes for a lot of colleagues? Growing number?
Yeah, I think there's about 40 Conservative MPs who are angry about the Plan B measures being introduced.
Some think.
Now, it depends on what the measures are going to be, but there's a real concern that even if the Labour Party support Johnson, it may not be enough, because there could be a massive rebellion against the restrictions. Because Boris Johnson, as we saw in the article before, Sajid Javid is being told to impose stricter controls. And if Boris Johnson has to bring in stricter controls, he could face a pretty big rebellion. And I think that, along with other things, may bring him down.
The number could be higher than that. The new rules passed only with Labour support. It's a very uncomfortable place for a Tory Prime Minister to be, and there's every expectation it'll be even rockier the other side of Christmas.
So Channel 4 seem to think that he will last after Christmas. They have their ear closer to the ground than I do, so I would imagine that they're right, that he's going to be rocky after Christmas. And you know, the restrictions, when is he going to ease the restrictions? And then we also have Brexit. The 1st of January, new checks come in on goods coming in from the EU. Boris Johnson's going to be under more pressure than... How much pressure can he take before he says, to hell with this, I'm gone? Not that he's kicked out, that he actually decides, I've had enough and I'm leaving. So just as I was saying about Brexit, I just want to share this story with you. But before we get to that, whoops, hey, my mouse is acting a bit strange. Okay, let me read some more of your comments. Remember, guys, to smash the like button. Yes, we've 550 viewers. Smash that like button, guys. Move there. I would pass anyway with Labour. It will pass anyway with Labour, yes. Both parties are evil. It would be party pretty much every night. What do the people think drug addicted rich narcissists do with their time? You're right, yes. And the SNP and Greens and Lib Dems. Hedgehog Legs, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well tonight. I wish they could take him out of Downing Street in handcuffs and all the stuff he's responsible for. He cost lives. Yes, I agree, Roisin, but unfortunately I don't see that happening. He's not going to be punished. But I think him being removed from office, and I hope he loses his seat. I hope that happens. That would be the most we can hope for, I think. I wonder when Boris Johnson is going to use the mental illness excuse. He can't use that excuse because he appears as, he's been acting the clown for so long, so I don't know what sort of excuse he can try and use. He could try and say something, it's become too much pressure for me, I want to spend time with my family, and say about how he got Brexit done and how he fought for the country during the pandemic and saved lives and stuff like this. But I don't know what excuse he will use. Boris says, well, at least I stopped them talking about second jobs. Yes. So it says here, since Brexit manifested earlier this year, the government has attempted to forge many trade deals. So this is from a story I was talking about earlier today, in case you haven't seen it, but it's from the Express, the pro-Tory, pro-Brexit Express. So it just says, since Brexit manifested earlier this year, the government has attempted to reforge the many trade deals it held as an EU member. Liz Truss has helped establish several since the 1st of January, signing off ambitious targets to cover 80% of UK trade with free trade agreements by 2022. But data from the Bank of England shows that despite her efforts, UK trading prospects have shrunk. On the 3rd of December, the Bank of England released data showing the UK's trading habits over the last 24 years. The bank added imports and exports and exhibited these trade flows as a percentage of GDP per year for the UK and EU main countries since 1997. The data showed that at the turn of the millennium, the country was nearly on par with the rest of the bloc, as each reported trade worth 50 to 60% of GDP. A vast chasm opened after 2011 when the EU started growing at a much more exponential rate, and this became even more pronounced in 2019 and 2021. And then you can see the data here. So this is from the Bank of England. The pink is EU main countries. It's not EU average, but it's the main countries, the senior countries in the biggest economies in the EU compared to the UK. And while there was a slight increase until 2018, it hasn't really recovered since the pandemic. And you can see how in 2021 EU main countries trade has recovered. Not completely, but it's almost there, while the UK is going in the opposite direction. It says here, so far she has secured arrangements with Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. Altogether, they barely contribute to UK GDP, below 0 and 0.16% respectively. At a maximum, these trade deals could provide a further 3.4 billion and take up to a decade to implement. The government now has its sights set on the US, which it has teased as a trade partner, able to plug up EU-sized holes because of since Brexit. But the National Audit Office has urged ministers not to rush to future arrangements. Speaking to the Times, Angus Brendan McNeill, chairman of the International Trade Committee, said they should focus on getting deals right. But the problem is with people like Liz Truss and the new International Trade Secretary, they're not really interested in doing good trade deals because good trade deals require time and effort. And Brexiteers are not interested in working hard and spending the time necessary. They want something quick and dirty. And if you want that, then you're going to compromise on a lot of things. And of course, the UK compared to the US, one economy is on the down, while the US economy is on the up, is recovering. So one is in a stronger position than the other, and whoever's in the stronger position, when negotiating, will be able to extract more concessions from the other. Paul, thanks for coming on the stream tonight. Got to go. Love your posts. Keep them coming. My shipmate, thank you so much for that kind comment. Have a great evening. Allegra looked like Judy from Punch and Judy. That's the way to do it. And who is Punch? Boris Johnson. How long until we have to eat the rich? Anytime now. How many of these companies still running are in the transition to move to the EU? Yes, many companies have, and I covered a story about a week ago, less than a week ago, a few days ago, where a company in the UK is saying, look, we can't continue to operate. We've been waiting for these free ports to be set up. We've been told by the government it'll take 2 years. We can't wait. We're going to move to the Netherlands. So some companies have already jumped to the EU. Others are planning to do it. Some are going to move to Northern Ireland. It seems now that a lot of the heat has been taken off the protocol. This was all saber rattling, and I knew this was going to happen. I knew that Lord Frost was just using Article 16 as a political tool. He wasn't really... He keeps saying, yes, we're holding it in reserve. But I really don't see how he's going to use Article 16. He's not going to trigger Article 16 in any real way because there's no benefit now. And especially if Boris Johnson goes, you're going to see a lot of people go with him. And you're going to see whoever takes over is going to have a reshuffle, and maybe Lord Frost would be replaced, which would be very interesting. So if Lord Frost was replaced with somebody more pragmatic, somebody a bit more moderate, which would be very interesting to see, you could see a real shift away from the Brexiteer mentality that Boris Johnson had. Now, I'm not saying that the next person who's going to be Prime Minister is not going to be a Brexiteer, but they may act in a very different way. Johnson, like many Tory leaders, wanted to use Brexit as some sort of tool to maintain his support, and that has been declining. Dr. Johan, thanks so much for that super chat. Cool. You're a cool dude. Thanks so much for that. Hope I didn't miss anyone else's super chats. Once I start blabbing, I don't see everything. Everyone in Ireland could see the type of person he was long before he was elected. Yes, I really don't understand. I remember vaguely following Boris Johnson when he was Mayor of London, and a little bit before that. But when he was Mayor of London, I was thinking, okay, why did people vote for him for comedy reasons? Was it just for the comedy? Is it because he's a buffoon? And then he became an MP. I was like, okay, that's concerning. Well, hopefully he'll never get into number 10 any day, because that would be just crazy. And now he's, then he became the leader of the Conservative Party. And then he won an election, even though people knew he was a liar and a charlatan. Johnson could well invoke Article 16 as a last-ditch desperate distraction. I don't think so, the Londoner, because it wouldn't really... See, he wants to... I think Johnson now sees the writing on the wall. I think Johnson knows that his days are numbered. And there's no real point in really trying to distract the public anymore. Because Article 16 will work for... What will it actually gain him? A bit of a distraction for a day. And then what will they do then? Uninvoke it? Because there are consequences if they invoke it. It'll be somebody else who will be paying the price. So I like Boris Johnson could invoke or trigger Article 16 and then leave office, and then somebody else would come in and untrigger it, or try and undo the damage. I would see that happening if he did trigger it, but I don't really see him triggering it. Not saying he wouldn't, because he's extremely unpredictable, but I don't see any real value for him, especially if he thinks that, look, I'm on very, very thin ice at the moment, and I'm on my last legs, because we're starting to see MPs moving from not supporting him to criticizing him and criticizing the government. They haven't directly criticized him, but they've been criticizing the government. And there are too many problematic factions within the Conservative Party. We have these, the Desmond Swayne faction. You have the Brexiteer faction. These are people who you can't keep happy, no matter what you do. The COVID idiot faction, the COVID recovery group, they don't want any type of lockdown. They don't want any type of restriction. So you can never keep these people happy. They just want things to go back to the way they were before the pandemic. And most reasonable people understand that's not going to happen. He sees the ancient Greek writing on the wall. Yes. Boris, he's doing his best. He's got us out of the EU. He would be a great laugh to have a pint with. Jeff Taylor's commenters have gone off him, though. And that's what's interesting, I found. I haven't been reading many of Jeff's comments, but commenters, but I have seen them secondhand. And yes, it seems that they're not too happy with him because he has betrayed them in a sense. And these people have moved on from Brexit to the pandemic. And a lot of these people... I don't understand the crossover, but there's a crossover between Brexiteers and people who are against wearing masks and against vaccines and stuff like that. And I think a lot of these people have moved on from Brexit. Okay, Brexit was done. It's not very good, but we're not going to continue to complain about it. But we're more concerned about our freedom and stuff like this, and how the government is taking away our freedom. Protocol. So I think there's a real... I think perhaps I haven't seen many of Jeff's videos, but I have seen one or two where he's talking about, the government taking away people's freedoms and stuff like this. So I think they have moved on to criticizing the pandemic response, because they can't defend Brexit anymore. There's no real benefit in saying Brexit is working because everyone knows it's not. Jeff Taylor for Prime Minister. Would it be worse than Boris Johnson or not? Answers in the comments. I think the link is underfunded schools. Those make people weak to propaganda and demagoguery. Yes. An informed public would not vote for someone like Boris Johnson. An informed public would not have voted for Brexit. And what's interesting is how, the people like Richard Tice and Nigel Farage who are saying, we need to... This referendum is a demonstration of democracy. Well, surely they would be happy to have another referendum allowing people to have another referendum if they wanted to change the status quo. We don't want to be out of the European Union anymore. We'd like to rejoin. Surely they would support for democratic reasons. They would support that, but no, it doesn't seem to be the case. There's a cross section between people that support Brexit and people who don't believe in mask wearing. I wonder what that could be due to. No comment about that. Anyway, let's move on. So, is the Labour Party benefiting from this? Well, so I want to show you this information from Election Maps UK, which is a very good account to follow on Twitter. It says here, poll leads since Partygate. And it shows you 3 opinion polls that were carried out. On the 8th of December, Labour had a 4-point lead. On the 8th to 9th of December, with another polling company, they had a 6-point lead. With YouGov, they had a 4-point lead. And Focal Data on the 9th, they had an 8-point lead. So it's none of them actually have Labour losing here. All of them have Labour leading between 4 and 8 points, which is a pretty good swing. Does it mean that if there was an election held tomorrow, the Conservatives would be swept out of power? Well, yes and no. So Labour would make some significant wins in England, not in Scotland, it seems. And it's difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult for Labour to win in Westminster, to form a government on their own. It's extremely difficult. So they need to form some sort of coalition, either with the SNP or with the SNP and the Lib Dems and the Greens. But it's likely that the Conservatives would remain the biggest party, but they wouldn't have a majority. Labour could form a majority, a slim majority, or they could form a minority government, so they would have more seats than the Conservatives forming a coalition, but they wouldn't have a majority. So you'd have a very difficult situation. But what I would push for them to do something in that situation is I would push them to introduce proportional representation to get rid of first past the post. And I don't see it necessary to have a referendum for that. Have a vote in Parliament. Push it through Parliament. Use the power that you have been given as a party to push that through. That's what I would prefer to see. Because the public don't understand proportional representation, and as we've seen with Brexit, many people would convince them to vote against their own interests, and proportional representation will be in the interest of the public. You wouldn't have an independent body set up to explain to the public this is what proportional representation is, and people would vote according to the information, the objective information that they receive from this type of independent body. No, you would have the likes of Nigel Farage on one side, you would have the Labour Party throwing their 2 cents in, you'd have the Conservatives against it. And while there's growing support for proportional representation in the Labour Party, many MPs are against it. Ones in safe seats, for example. The Conservatives are against it because it would destroy the Conservative Party. It would destroy the Labour Party as well. But you would have the different factions within the Labour Party, the Corbynite wing and the Starmer wing would go their separate directions. And I was speaking to somebody about this, and they said it could actually work. You could actually have a much better coalition with these two factions together. So they'd be separate, but they would work together. And they could actually have a better relationship than they actually do at the moment, where you have a lot of infighting within the Labour Party. PR for Farage in Westminster. See, the thing is about yes, that would be a price worth paying, though. Farage in Westminster, I understand that's a horrible idea, but he would not have any power. Like in the European Parliament, he had no real power. He shouted a lot, he made a lot of noise, but he didn't have any power. And if he was in Westminster and he wanted to get into power, he wouldn't be able to form a government on his own. He'd have to go into coalition with someone else. And by going into coalition, it would dilute his influence. Because he wouldn't get his way all the time. So, it's better to have a diluted Nigel Farage than a Priti Patel with an 80-seat majority. You wouldn't have parties with massive majorities. You would have coalition parties, coalition governments. And when you have a coalition, you have people who don't agree, put together, forced together, and they have to adapt within their coalition. So the more extremes have less and less influence. I dare him to do an Article 16 US trade deal off. I don't see him doing that, though. Not saying it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely. So I just think that's interesting. The Labour Party are making some gains. Is it enough? At the moment, no. But the longer Boris Johnson stays in number 10, the better it is for the Labour Party. Hey, okay. So I just want to show you this clip. Oh my God. Hey, stop. So Jacob Rees-Mogg was seen laughing at a right-wing think tank party. He was meeting with some people from a right-wing think tank, and they were laughing about social distancing. They were laughing about lockdown rules, making jokes about whether the police would be involved. And this is him apologising.
Now, as regards what I said at the IEA, what I was saying was how nice it was to be free of restrictions so that we can have parties this year.
So it's like insulting someone and then saying, no, I wasn't insulting them. I was talking about how great they are. Just using alternative language.
That was what I was being pleased about, as opposed to the comparison to last year. And this has got better because of what the government has done. So the Honourable Lady complains about government spending, though she didn't have anything very specific to mention in relation to that.
Oh my God. I know, I'm sorry to inflict Jacob Rees-Mogg on you, but Jacob Rees-Mogg is another one. I don't think Jacob Rees-Mogg is going to stay if Boris Johnson leaves. Because Jacob Rees-Mogg is dirty as well. He's just as dirty as Boris Johnson. And I think his position would be untenable if Boris Johnson leaves. So, on the bright side, there's a lot on the bad side. On the negative, there's a lot of corruption and a lot of this horrible behavior taking place. But on the bright side, Boris Johnson may take Jacob Rees-Mogg with him. Don't see Jacob Rees-Mogg losing his seat, but he should lose his position as leader of the House. So that has to be welcomed. Okay.
This is Jeanette.
So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to show you this clip from Channel 4 News about the NHS and how things need to be, how there's a risk at this stage of it being overwhelmed.
This is Jeanette Main. Shortly after she fell and broke her leg on Monday, she lay like this for 7 hours waiting for an ambulance. And this is her talking to us today from her hospital bed, where she described what happened.
Yeah, so we arrived at the hospital about 10 o'clock and we had to wait outside in the ambulance. At least I was warm and had some pain relief and things in the ambulance though. Then they sorted it so that as soon as I came into the hospital, they did an x-ray. But then I had to go and wait on the corridor for another, hour and a half, 2 hours.
Jeanette is the human face behind the data released by NHS England this morning, which gives a picture of how the health service is performing. There is very little good news in the figures. Once again, waiting times have hit record highs across a number of NHS departments in England. Nearly 6 million people waited to start hospital treatments at the end of October. More than 10,500 people waited over 12 hours to be admitted to A&E, and more than 8,000 people arriving by ambulance waited more than an hour to be handed over to the emergency department.
6 million, almost 6 million people waiting on a list. Now, Gareth, thanks so much for that super chat. Let me just respond to Gareth's comment first. No civilized society can be a democracy when a legislature consists of two political parties and safe seats. Last message from me. Love the content. Thank you so much, Gareth. It's very kind of you. Thanks so much for your support tonight. And have a great evening. This is, and I think this is not by mistake, but this is by design. You can't have a real society if you have just two main parties, and that's what's a huge problem in the United States as well. But it's I think we're starting to see the end of first past the post in Britain. It cannot be continued. We can't have a two-party state. Something is going to give. So just on the NHS, I think this is by design. Because if you have more and more people waiting who need surgery, who need treatment, what are they going to do? They're either, if they don't have the money, they're going to wait. If they do have the money, they're going to go privately. And what's going to happen is the government are just going to say, well, look, the NHS isn't working. Look how many people are waiting. Look how it's broken. The better solution is to go privately. And you're going to hear stories about how it's better to go private. It's cheaper in the long term. It's better for society. It's better for the patients. The NHS is broken. The NHS doesn't work. It's out of date. It's obsolete. This is the type of language that the Tories and their supporters have been pumping out a lot recently. You know, instead of rallying around the NHS during the pandemic, the knives are out.
I have to say, everything, every person, every member of staff has just been magnificent. So lovely. But I've spoken to a doctor this afternoon who I think she said she was from Romania. And she said that kind of wait for an ambulance just wouldn't happen.
In October, Channel 4 News filmed the discharge unit at this Northumbria trust. They were preparing to send Mary Swindles home after a fall. But NHS England has said that last week, on average, there were 10,500 patients each day who no longer needed to be in hospital, but who were not discharged. The pressures on social care in the community being felt across the health service.
So the problem in social care is that there aren't enough staff. So if there aren't enough staff, they can't take people from hospitals. If they can't take people from hospitals, the people stay in hospitals, meaning that there's more pressure on the hospitals, and people going into hospital have to wait until a bed is available.
There is some good news about what we've heard today. Over 150,000 more people started treatment last month in comparison to the same month last year. The average wait for diagnostic tests is down. So all that hard work by NHS staff is having effects, but the top line, the number of people waiting, well, we knew that was high, and it's going to carry on rising because most estimates suggest there are still several million people out there in the community who should be on the waiting list and who are not.
Today, as ambulances queued outside Coventry Hospital, figures also showed the highest number of 999 calls for any November on record, an average of around 1 every 3 seconds. And now there is Omicron. The numbers thought to be doubling every 2 to 3 days. Modelling from government advisors released last night said in one scenario, hospital admissions from the new variant could top 1,000 a day by the end of the year.
I feel sorry for anyone in England who needs an ambulance or go to A&E. I'm just so glad to live in Scotland, where the NHS in Scotland beats the disastrous Tory-run NHS in England with by a country mile. It's because healthcare is a devolved power in Scotland and Wales, I think, so things are done differently. This is frustrating to see because it doesn't have to be like this, but this is by Tory design.
Although direct comparisons can't easily be made with South Africa, they are reporting a sharp rise in patients with Omicron.
Almost a 255% of increase during the past 7 days in terms of the number of cases. And in terms of admissions in both public and also private hospitals, we are seeing also an increase in number of cases. And this is about almost 12% of increase when we look at the past 24 hours. That was as of yesterday.
They are not, however.
I just want to read Artemis's comment, because Artemis has her finger on the pulse of the NHS. Everyone comes into hospital, Max. Many are not acutely ill, but they're not coping at home. We are in big trouble at work, and the accident emergency department is so overwhelmed. I wish I could do something. I feel impotent about this because I have this channel, the 86,000 subscribers, and I feel I wish I could do something for the NHS in particular, because the NHS is something, I see it as something that needs to be emulated around the world. Is it perfect? It's not perfect, but it's the best. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, healthcare system in the world, because we have different models all over Europe, but I think the NHS one is the best. And it frustrates me that it's been torn down by the Tories who never actually need it, and it's been torn down in order to sell it off, almost to give it away for free to their cronies, to their friends, and to American companies as well. Because what I see in the United States, and I'm a bit of a fan of Bernie Sanders, who's talked about this, and if you watch some American channels like Secular Talk, and they cover stories about how people in the United States would go into debt paying medical bills. People have to sell their homes in order to pay for cancer treatment. And we don't want to emulate that. We want to move as far away as possible from that. And the Tories want to bring to drive the UK towards something like that, completely privatised. and the public are going along with it. Every vote for Boris Johnson, every vote for a Tory is a vote against the NHS. Scrap the NHS bill. Well said, number 3.
For seeing large numbers being admitted to intensive care, which may give some hope. But in the UK, nobody is complacent, with warnings that we are going to face another difficult winter.
Victoria MacDonald reporting.
The Freckled Pony, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Hope you're well this evening. Healthcare at the point of need. Bernie Sanders, yes.
Well, I've been speaking with Professor Peter Openshaw of Imperial College London, who's also Vice Chair of NERVTAG, the New and Emerging Respiratory Virus Threats Advisory Group. I began by asking him whether he thought the measures introduced in Plan B were the right ones, given the strains on the NHS.
I'm really pleased that these measures have been introduced, but I think many of us wonder if they are going to be stringent enough to keep this really highly infectious variant under control. The rate of growth at the moment is very, very high. And I do applaud these measures, but wonder whether we're going to have to introduce additional measures.
I just want to reply to Wee Scott's Dog's comment. The NHS is the most efficient system in the world, according to the WHO. Just imagine how good it would be if it was properly funded. It isn't close to the funding that comparable systems in Europe get. Yeah, can you imagine if the Tories said, we're actually not going to defund the NHS, we're going to actually fund it correctly? Can you imagine what it would be like? You would eliminate a lot of these waiting lists and these waiting times.
Given that it doesn't seem to be killing people, is that perhaps why the government's holding back?
I think that's certainly one of the key things that we need to know more about is the severity of disease. I would emphasize that so far, we've only seen this disease play itself out over a matter of a few days, and many people don't get seriously ill until the 2nd or 3rd week. So I think it's too early to say how serious the disease is going to be once it's replicating at high levels on our own shores.
The data shown yesterday at the Downing Street press conference appears to show a doubling time for Omicron of 2 to 3 days. What does that actually mean?
It means that this virus is capable of growing very fast indeed. With some viruses, some of the previous variants, it's taken a lot longer for the virus to double its numbers. What it means is that if there's one case today in a particular place, then in 2 or 3 days, that's going to turn into 2 or 3 more days, that's going to turn into 4, 2 or 3 more days, that's going to turn into 8. So within 3 doubling times, which could be as little as a week, you've turned a small number into a very large number. And within a few weeks, that turns into thousands.
It sounds a sort of cynical question, but if it doesn't kill, well, it is said that Omicron is relatively mild, why are we worrying about it?
I think it's too early to conclude that it's mild. I think we need a lot more information about the way in which it presents clinically, and we need to see what happens as the disease develops. Remember that in the first few days, SARS-CoV-2 normally presents as a mild viral infection. It's only in the 2nd and 3rd week that we start to see the serious consequences of that infection.
And he's right. And also the concern is not so much the symptoms, but what impact it will have on the healthcare system. And that's what it's always been about, is about protecting the healthcare system. Because if the healthcare system collapses, then we're in serious trouble.
So it really is too early. We don't have enough clinical information to say it's mild. I think it'd be very premature to make that judgment at the moment.
When we look at the COVID numbers, 148 deaths in the last 24 hours, how many does it have to reach before more restrictions are brought in?
I think many of us have felt that 150 deaths a day is an unacceptably high number. I mean, I think if you compare that with, say, the number of people who die in road traffic accidents in a year, this is a really very, very high number indeed. And if you compare it with influenza, this is also a very, very high death rate that we at the moment seem to be tolerating. Many of us would much prefer that rate to be very much lower, but this needs public debate, really. You know, what is an acceptable death rate? But to me, 150 a day is too many.
Professor Peter,
Okay, so this is concerning, and hopefully the vaccine is going to protect most of us. Now, the problem, of course, is that we in the West have reached a high level of vaccination rate. We've protected most of our economies and most of our countries and our populations. But those in the global South are not protected. And this is the real serious problem here, is that we are protecting ourselves with the idea that, well, once everyone is vaccinated, or the majority are, then we're okay. But the rest of the world needs to be vaccinated. No one's safe until everyone's safe. And we have to reinforce this message. We need to share with poorer countries the extra vaccines that we have. We need to roll them out. We need to provide support, infrastructure, provide assistance to governments who struggle with poor infrastructure to get the vaccines to villages and to remote areas. We need to do whatever we can in order to protect ourselves. Because if we don't, we're going to see more variants, and it's going to become more and more difficult to fight them. Let me read some more of your comments. Nicholas said that the rate is so high with Omicron that in a few days it will take over Delta. People in the UK haven't been exposed to beta before. Non-mild infections is more people than predicted. Seasonality will also be a factor. UBI, Boomer Age. Yeah, unfortunately I didn't get to UBI tonight. There hasn't been a lot of news about UBI at the moment, but of course, anyone who's not familiar with UBI, it's a universal basic income, providing people with the minimum to live. Maybe it being £1,000 a month, for example. This would be a perfect solution to many of the problems we're facing at the moment. It would be, in a sense, it would be a silver bullet to a significant number of social ills. And if we're going to go into lockdowns, for example, it would provide people with the means to get by. A universal basic income, I'm a huge advocate of it, and I really hope some parties are considering rolling it out soon, and I hope we're going to see some results of that. James, thanks so much for that super chat. NHS will be better under Labour Party leadership. Yes, the Labour Party are the ones that brought in the NHS. They generally defend it. Generally, I say. But there needs to be a rolling back of the privatisation of the NHS. And I've said this since the beginning of since the beginning of this channel. I said that what is the point in having a government if they don't look after the health and also education, but principally the health of its citizens? What is the point in having a government if they don't do that? So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat, greatly appreciated. We're almost at the end, but we have our one for the road. Hope you enjoyed the stream tonight. Remember to smash the like button if you haven't already. Just helps the channel. And thanks to everyone who supports the channel. And if you want to go a bit further, you can become a patron. There's no obligation, of course, but if you do, you get access to Discord. And after each live stream, there's a Discord chat. We talk about what we talked about on the stream tonight. So before we finish, we have our one for the road.
Now that I've joined the second-hand police corps, I'm investigating to see if there's been a party in my house last year during the lockdown when people couldn't have parties and people couldn't visit their own relatives. I'm investigating on behalf of the police to see if there was a party in my house, and also fighting drugs.
I smell drugs.
But at the end of the day, there shouldn't have been a party in my house. I mean, I was in that house, so I'll be doing a very thorough investigation to see if somebody had a party while I was stood in the hall, or maybe in the lobby, or in the back bedroom. I'll be investigating this rigorously.
What was he doing in the back bedroom? So guys, thanks once again to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat, and thanks to all the moderator for doing a wonderful job tonight. I think we had a few trolls, but they were dealt with quite easily. So guys, have a great weekend. I'll see you next time, same bat channel on Tuesday, 8:30 Central European Time, 8:30 British Summer Time. Not British Summer Time, so summer is over. Greenwich Mean Time. So I'll see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend, and as always, take care. Good night, guys. Talk to you soon.